Hi, Brian from Tallman Minis here. Today I'm going to go over the last part of my Blood Angels army painting series. In this video I'm going to cover how I achieve this Moonrock base effect. It's very simple and it really gives a nice battlefield look to your miniatures. This method can be adapted by using different colours, so regardless of your army you could create an effect that suits you best. I've used this same technique for my Death Corps of Krieg. So stick around to the end and I'll go through the colours that I used. Let's start by applying a coat of GW Technical Astro Granite. You can do this anytime. I usually do it towards the end of painting a miniature so that I can cover up any mistakes I've made while painting the feet. To add some interesting detail, I've added some large blobs of the textured paint and placed a few pieces of cork into those areas. Now it is better to obviously glue these on beforehand, so this was a bit of an afterthought. I just wanted to see how well the dried paint would hold these in place, and it actually worked out quite well. Even if they fell off, I could always glue them back on later. Now I'm going to apply a base coat of GW Abaddon Black. Any black is fine. Now I've thinned this quite a lot here. This is because it can be quite difficult to reach some of the awkward areas of the cork, so just be careful. But don't worry too much about making mistakes, as they can be easily covered up. Now, while that dries, I'm going to take some Vallejo heavy charcoal and thin this down heavily. Not so much that you want a wash, you just want a very thin paint. Vallejo's extra opaque or Games Workshop's base colours work really well for this stage. Next, get an old brush, preferably one that has split bristles just like this. Take your thinned paint, wipe off the excess, and give the bottom of your mini a damp brush. That's really the only name I have for it. Flicking upwards from the base towards the knees. Now it's really personal preference how much you want to do at this stage. I usually just try to cover up the areas that I found difficult or I was too lazy to edge highlight, but just try to make it look random. Give this a good 20 or 30 minutes to dry. If you want, you can apply a thin coat of matte varnish. This will help to prevent it rubbing off in the dry brushing stage. But once again, this is personal preference. Not varnishing it will make it rub off a little, but that can add to the weathering look. Next, we take some Vallejo heavy charcoal, neat, not thinned, and give the base and the lower parts of the legs a dry brush. Move your brush in circular motions and make sure you get the inside of the legs. This helps to soften the grime effect and makes it look more like dried on dirt. I like to give this a good 20 minutes to dry. You can always varnish in between each stage if you prefer. I generally do. Think of varnishing as your save as button. Now I'm going to take some GW Dawnstone. And again, give the base and the miniature a dry brush. I always like to start on the outer edge of the base first. This way you can test if there's too much paint on your brush, and if there is, it's easier to cover up mistakes on the base than it is on your miniature. Use circular motions for the base, but for the legs, try to stick with an upwards motion. Keep it light, don't apply too much pressure because you don't want to cover up your heavy charcoal. This gives you a nice primary highlight. Finally, we take some GW Administratum Grey. I like to give the edge of the base a very strong dry brush here and keep it minimal in the centre. This gives a little depth and creates a shadow under the Space Marine. On the legs, you should keep moving in an upwards flicking motion. Try to keep it smooth and generate that strong highlight. Then finally, I give the miniature one final coat of AK Interactive Ultramatte Varnish. And there you have the complete Moonrock style base. I've used this on all my Blood Angels models from troops to dreadnoughts, but it's great for squads and it saves time when it comes to edge highlighting their feet, especially if you don't like sub-assemblies like me and just put them straight onto the base. But I generally keep it to a minimum for character models. Now, as I mentioned at the start, I've used a similar recipe for other models. Here are 2 members of my Death Corps of Krieg kill team. Now, I painted these back in October last year, when I was still experimenting with my painting style, and long before I thought about doing a YouTube channel, but the techniques are pretty much identical. Let's have a look at the paints I used. For the texture, I used GW Technical Agrellan Badlands. It's very similar to Astro Granite, just a different colour obviously, but it's also a little thicker and slightly more textured. Then I gave each base a liberal wash of GW Agrax Earthshade. Finally, I gave them a dry brush of Vallejo Bronzed Flesh Tone, dry brushing in a smooth upwards motion. I think this gives a really good mud effect, and it blends in well with the Kill Team game board. So there we have it. That completes my army painting series for Blood Angels. I hope you found it useful, and I hope it inspires you to try out some of my recipes on your own armies. If it has, please consider liking my video or subscribing for more videos like this in the future. Warhammer painting is a very personal thing, and techniques evolve and change over time, and I'd be really interested in seeing how you've adapted or modified these for your own use. My email address is found on my YouTube page, so drop me a line, send me a picture, and maybe I'll be able to put it in a future video. So I might give the Space Marines a break for a little while. I've lots of other squads from Kill Team to paint, as well as some terrain, and I've just received the Star Wars Legion box set. So until next time, remember, enjoy your painting, have fun, and I'll see you soon.